Listo, profe. Bien, ya cumpliendo con el tiempo, podríamos dar inicio a la sesión. Bien, buenas tardes, profesora y compañero. Me presento, mi nombre es Rafael, soy su moderador asignado el día de hoy. Les doy la bienvenida a la clase de Teorías de la Adquisición de Segunda Lengua. Bien, la profesora, impartida por la profesora Aylin Santana. Antes de iniciar, como se hace de costumbre, darle algunos parámetros antes de esta sesión. Estas sesiones se pueden grabar y puedan verlas directamente en en la plataforma el día de mañana. Esto quiere decir que algún estudiante que por motivo personal o laboral no puede estar dentro de la sesión el día de hoy, el mañana podrá gozar de esta información directamente ingresando a la plataforma. Les solicitamos que por favor silencien sus micrófonos y puedan activarlo cuando requieren alguna consulta o algún aporte. Claro está, con el permiso del profesor. O de igual manera pueden hacer el icono de levantar la mano y se les cederá la palabra. Bien, se les solicita que por favor mantengan sus cámaras encendidas en todo momento. De no poder hacerlo, enviar sus excusas por el chat de Zoom. De lo contrario, será retirado de la sesión y se le restarán puntos de la heterovaloración del docente. Bien, si ya saben que no pueden encender la cámara, escribirnos de una vez sus excusas en el privado del Zoom. O si no pueden escribirlo, por lo menos comentarlo, puedo decirlo. Mi rol como moderador es facilitar y apoyar en parte técnica, ya que parte que tenga la profesora y demás. Las consultas las pueden hacer de forma, como mencioné antes, general o personal directamente en la bandeja de chat de Zoom. O la pueden hacer también por el foro de la plataforma. Recuerden, les exhorto a que tengan bolígrafo y papel a la mano para así hacer sus anotaciones y aprovechar al máximo la sesión del día de hoy. Sin más que comentar, profe, le cedo la palabra y deseo que tenga excelente clase.
Muchas gracias. Ya comparto. Okay, students, so today we're going to work in the module number 4, reading number 1, that is about the project case learning, okay? To get that, so this is the time that you take to say thank you for everything that you received in your life and everything that you propose, okay? Keep going, never stop dreaming, never stop believing, never give up, trying and never stop learning. Okay, review of previous classes. So the last class was about the cooperative learning and collaborative learning and the communicative approach. Okay, so the cooperative learning is a specific kind of a collaborative learning. In cooperative learning, students work together in small groups on the structured activity. Okay, so they are individually accountable for their work, and the work of the group as a whole is also assessed. And the cooperative group work face to face and learn to work as a team. Okay. In the case of a collaborative learning, is a method of teaching and learning in which students came together to explore significant questions or create meaningful projects. And a group of students discussing a lecture or students from different schools working together over the internet on a shared assignment are both examples of collaborative example learning. Sorry. And in the case of communicative approach, the communicative approach is based on the idea that learning language successfully comes without having to communicate real meanings. So when learners are involved in real communication, their natural strategies for languages acquisition will be used. And this will allow them to learn to use the language. Okay? So let me start with the reading number one, project-based learning. Okay, so project-based learning or PBL or project-based instruction as an instructional approach designed to give students the opportunity to develop knowledge and skills throughout engaging projects set around challenge and problems they may face in the real world. So you can find a reading in the platform, right? So the reading offers you all the information that you need to solve all your activities and all your tests, okay? So project-based learning or PBL is a teaching method in which students learn by actively engaging in the real world, personally and projects. So it's sad to find so many students stuck in boring classes simply because they lack fundamental English, okay? So their lower level of English apparently condemns them to worksheets and low expectations, but research proved that what they really need is proactive engagement with authentic experiences in language. So wait me some seconds, please. I have a problem with the noise. I'm sorry for this. Okay, so the next important point that you can find in the reading is about the form that you apply this kind of information, right? So how does PBL differ and differ from the just doing a project, okay? So doing a project requires students to do a short project that usually has the objective to consolidate the content of teaching unit. For example, imagine you have covered the present perfect in the context of life experiences with your teen class at P1 level. So you want your students to practice the new language learned, and you will probably ask them to do a project. So create a class survey about things they have or haven't done and collect data and present the results. And the PBL is it. The project is a unit. It is a vehicle for learning and development skills, but still Institute of Education in the 2018. Okay, and the aim is to engage students in solving a real world problem or answering and driving question which require an extended period of time and meaningful language use and use of life skills in communication and collaboration, creative, critical thinking, and problem solving. So when those languages come into play, anytime at different stages of the project throughout students, collaborative work and negotiations, access to authentic source, and throughout teachers' language input. Now, you can use this information to make your lesson plans or make your class, okay? So with this information, remember all this information is the reading number one that you can find in the platform, okay? So let me share with you the first video for the class, okay? Wait some seconds, please. Hello.
Hello teachers, welcome to class. I'm Cindy Farr and today we're talking about how we can challenge our students, get them excited about learning, go deeper into content, and remember what they've learned longer. Project-based learning, or PBL, could be our answer. Research shows that PBL, compared with traditional teaching methods, does increase student engagement, deeper knowledge, and knowledge retention. PBL, as defined by Edutopia, is a dynamic classroom approach in which students actively explore real-world problems and challenges and acquire a deeper knowledge. PBL may sound new, but its roots go all the way back to the late 1600s. That's when the idea of teaching using projects emerged as an educational movement in architecture and engineering. Its foundations are also related to the theory of constructivism, in which students have an active role in their learning. So what does PBL look like in today's classroom? For the answer, we turn to the Buck Institute for Education, or BIE, a nonprofit organization helping teachers prepare students for successful lives by showing them how to use project-based learning. The BIE website describes the 3 essential components of what it calls gold standard PBL. First, student learning goals. That includes knowledge of content standards and the ability to apply that knowledge to the real world using 21st century skills. The second component is essential project design elements, beginning with an engaging problem or driving question like, how can we improve our school recycling system to reduce waste? Other design elements of PBL include an authentic or real-world application, such as improving a local park, and student voice, meaning that students care more about their projects if they have a voice in choosing them, and reflection to help students and teachers think about the approach to the next assignment. Then comes critique and revision. Students give and receive feedback. And finally, a public product. Because when students share their products within or outside the school community, it encourages higher quality work. And the third component of Gold Standard PBL is project-based teaching practices. That's right, here's your part. Design and plan, align the assignment to standards, build the culture which promotes student independence and growth. Then manage the activities with checkpoints and deadlines. Scaffold student learning with tools and strategies to help kids reach their goals. Assess student learning using formative and summative assessments. And finally, engage and coach students. What we're really talking about is a transformation of the traditional classroom as the teacher changes roles from the often quoted sage on the stage to guide on the side. But this change isn't always easy. According to the Buck Institute, one of the biggest hurdles for many teachers is the need to give up some degree of control over the classroom and trust in their students. Another challenge with PBL is the time it takes students to complete projects. Despite these issues, there are so many benefits to project-based learning that have been researched and documented. Let's look at that evidence. In a 2011 study, researchers determined that PBL had successfully exposed students to important workforce skills such as teamwork, managing conflicts, decision-making, and communication skills. In 2013, a study was conducted on the effect of PBL on the success of 6th graders in science class, and researchers found that group significantly outperformed the other students who learned with traditional teaching methods. In the article, The Cognitive Science Behind the Common Core, the authors discuss the close relationship between PBL and the Common Core emphasis on deeper understanding, higher order thinking skills, and real-world application. The authors say those benefits of PBL are well documented and that it may also be an effective instructional tool to narrow the achievement gap for low-performing students. To sum it up, project-based learning, or PBL, has enormous potential to better prepare students for the workforce they will be entering someday, while helping them to remember and enjoy their learning a lot more along the way.
Okay, so with this information, I consider that you can solve the practice of this activity of this class for today. But I know that you're not here, so for this reason, I show you the questions, and then for the next class, you can bring me the answer. Okay, so let me share with you the questions. Wait, give me one second, please. Where is that? Okay, so you can find three different questions and you can use information in the reading to solve. Okay, so the first one is, what is a project-based learning? Number two, how does PBL differ from just doing a project? And number three, how can project-based learning be implemented? So the number one, what is a project-based learning? Um, is the value of a PBL, or is the aim to build students' creative capacity and to work out difficult or ill-structured problems, and commonly in small teams. Okay, and you can use the PBL to teach students how the following phases that you can implement inside your application, right? So identify the problem and is when a friend or devising a solution and potential solution path to the problem or to achieve or how to achieve the problem. And the second one is designing and developing a prototype of the solution. Okay, and you can use all these important techniques or uses or phases to put in practice your project-based learning in the classroom. Okay, number two, how does PBL differ from just doing a project? And this part or this information requires that students to do a short project that usually has the objective to consolidate the content of a teaching unit. And you can use different important aspects to develop this. For example, use of life skills or meaningful language use or an extended period of time inside your activities in the classroom. And you can use this kind of information in different stages of the project so students collaborate to work in negotiation. So you have to put in practices and try to implement inside your classroom at the moment to develop the project-based learning, okay? And then number three, how can project-based learning be implemented? Okay, so a PBO includes several key processes. So number one, finding problems, as you can hear in the previous information. Number two, generating multiple ideas to solve and given a problem. Number three, prototyping, often in rapid interactions. And number four, testing the developed solution or all the solutions that we can offer to this problem, okay? So you have to keep in mind this information at the moment to implement this kind of information in your class, okay? Okay, so with this part, let me move to the presentation again. Okay. So as you know, the PBL or the project-based learning use the educational value of PBLs and involve the students designing, developing, and constructing hands-on solutions to a problem. Okay. As you know, you can use different aspects or different tools to develop this as identify the problem or designing and developing a prototype of the solution and refining the solution based on feedback from experts, instructors, or the educators or peers, okay? So depending on the goals of the instructors and the size and scope of the project can vary greatly, and students may complete the 4 different phases that I mentioned at the beginning. There's a over the course or over the class, and different or several times within a single class period. Okay, so we have to focus on the creativity or the creativity and collaboration, and the PBL is enhanced when students experience opportunities to work across disciplines or employ technologies to make communication and product realization more efficient, or to design solutions to real world problems posed by outside organizations or corporations. So projects do not need um, to be highly complex for students to benefit from PBL techniques. Oftentimes, quick and simple projects are enough to provide students with valuable opportunities to make connections across content and practice. Okay, implementing product-based learning as a pedagogical approach, and PBL entails several key processes, as I mentioned at the beginning: the defining problems, generating multiple ideas to solve a given problem, prototyping, and testing. So the first one is about the defining the problem. And PBL projects should start with student asking questions about the problem, and what is the nature of the problem they are trying to solve, and what is assumption can they make about why the problem exists. And asking such questions will help students frame the problem in appropriate context. And if the students are working on a real world problem, it is important to consider how an user will benefit from a solution. Okay. And the number 2, you can find generating ideas. So students should be given the opportunity to brainstorm and discuss their ideas for solving the problem. And the emphasis here is not to generate necessarily good ideas, but to generate many ideas. As such, brainstorming should encourage students to think wildly, but to stay focused on the problem. And setting gentleness for brainstorming sessions, such as should be number 1, and a chance to get or a chance to use your voice and ideas, suspending judgment of others' ideas, and building on the ideas of others will help make brainstorming a productive and generative exercises that maybe you can put in practice in the classroom. Okay. Number 3, prototyping solutions. So designing and prototyping the solution are typically the next phase of the PBA process. A prototype may take many forms: mock-up, storyboard, a role play, or even an object made out of readily available materials such as pot cleaners, popsicle sticks, and rubber bands. And the purpose of a prototyping is to pull or is to expand upon the ideas generated during the brainstorming phase, and to quickly convey how solutions to problem might look and feel. And prototypes can often expose learning assumptions as well as uncover empowering challenges that and the user of the solution might encounter. And the focus on the creating simple prototypes also means that the students can iterate on their design quickly and easily, incorporate the feedback into their designs, and continually hone their problem solutions. In the case of the testing, the students may then go about taking their prototypes to the next level of design. Testing, ideally testing takes place in a live setting, and testing allows students to learn how well their products or service work in a real setting. And the results of the testing can provide students with important feedback on their solutions and generating questions to consider, and did the solution work is a plan. It's not what needs to be tweaked. And this way, testing engages students in critical thinking and reflection process. So with this information, let me share with you the next video for the class. Okay, so wait please a second.
Are you struggling with your submission? Work online with your residency and Teorías in correspondence, formatting, project-based learning.
Learning, in short PBL, is a powerful way to learn new things and remember them for a long time. It describes a form of learning that happens as a result to solving actual problems. It's arguably so effective because first, it gives solving problems meaning, and second, because each task in a project is mentally tied along a storyline which eventually leads to either failure or success of an entire project. That means what we learn during the process has more meaning, and we can remember it later by mentally revisiting our project story. Business visionary Elon Musk explained it quite well. He said that our brain has evolved to discard information that it thinks has irrelevance. Picking a problem and then using various education tools like math, language, or economics to solve that problem is therefore far more engaging than teaching the tools itself. Say we are going to take apart an engine to see how it works and then put it back together again. In order to take it apart, we need wrenches, screwdrivers, a winch, and other tools. In the course of solving that problem of taking apart the engine, we learn about the tools, how to apply them, and why they matter. To understand it better, let's look at the story of Jane, a shy 19-year-old student who wanted to move out from home but miserably failed. Jane just finished her high school degree and still lives with her parents. She is eager to move out and live on her own, but she has a tight budget. Jane begins her project with asking around. Where do her friends recommend her to live? How much do they pay? She starts to search online, but is soon overwhelmed by all the options. Jane learns that her search is not effective unless she knows precisely how much money she can spend for rent. Her brain takes note that such a big project needs proper planning. The next day, Jane spends making some serious calculations about her income, her savings, and her monthly expenses, like food, phone bills, going to the movies. Her calculation leads to the conclusion that her budget for rent is very small. She starts thinking about taking on a job tutoring music to kids. This could get her another $200 a month, although there are additional expenses since she would need to buy a new guitar. Jane's brain goes through the various computations, making a cost-benefit analysis, and decides to try moving out without taking on a job. Jane is happy. She made up her mind and realized that math is a good tool that supports making an informed decision. The next day, Jane starts searching online again, this time for a shared home. It doesn't take her long, and she makes her first call to get an appointment to meet the hosts. This is her first viewing. There are 3 flatmates. They tell her to sit down and start asking very directly about her habits, preferences, and how to describe her personality. Jane starts to feel uncomfortable and stressed. All she wants is to leave. She completely stops focusing. She excuses herself and simply walks out. Outside, she feels terrible. Her brain notes an increased heart rate, some confusion about how to describe Jane, and a lack of communication skills responding to immediate social pressure. In the evening, she lies in bed and can't sleep. She starts to have doubts. Should she really move out? Maybe this is not for her. Maybe she is too young to live with such independent people. She decides that she will stay at home for now. Eventually, she falls asleep. During her sleep, her brain keeps working and revisits the experiences of that day. It puts the experience in perspective and decides what can be forgotten. A few days later, Jane meets an old friend who has just moved into a shared house and tells her about his experience. It sounded so exciting. Her friend made his project a reality. Jane remembers her initial motivation, how much she wanted to be independent. She decides to give it another try. Jane spends the entire evening looking at listings, noting down the most promising posts. At midnight, she calls her best friend, asking him to describe her personality to prepare for her next interview. Her brain, fueled by millions of excited neurotransmitters, now learns with laser-sharp focus. The next day, she goes to see 3 new apartments. She learns to answer questions about herself and even ask questions about the others. Do you mind if I play guitar? What do you do for a living? What are your thoughts on keeping it tidy? On her 4th appointment, Jane finds an apartment with 2 super fun roommates who share lots of her interests. 2 days later, she arrives at her new home with her backpack and a big smile on her face. A new life begins. In the evening, her brain notes all the things it learned during the project: her budget calculation, her preferences, her social anxiety, and new developed social skills. Most importantly, the brain realizes that getting better at social skills is similar to improving her guitar skills. We get better with practice. 10 years later, Jane reads a study from 2009 that showed that PBL students perform as well or better than traditional students. Findings indicated that projects were superior when it comes to long-term retention, skill development, and satisfaction of both students and teachers. Traditional learning approaches were more effective for short-term retention as measured by standardized board exams. The idea of project-based learning was made popular by the educational reformer John Dewey. In 1916, he claimed that the student learns more if he is interested in the subject and recommended learning by doing, or learning by solving a problem. Dewey further stressed the importance of the connection between life and the objects we are studying. On learning, he said, "If knowledge comes from the impressions made upon us by natural objects, it is impossible to procure knowledge without the use of objects which impress the mind."
Okay, so you can use or take the different characteristic information in the project-based learning. Okay, so the first one is about the interdisciplinary. It's in the curriculum, it's designed to engage students using a real-world problem. This is an interdisciplinary approach because real-world challenges are rarely solved using information or skills from a single subject area. So projects require students to engage in inquiry, solution building, and product construction to help address the issues or challenge present. So as the students do the work, they often use content knowledge and skill for multiple academic domains to successfully complete the project. Number 2, rigorous. And the project-based learning education supplies the application of knowledge and skills, not just recall or recognition. Unlike rote learning to access a single fact, the PBL asks how the students apply a variety of academic content in a new context. So as the students engage in a project, they begin by asking the questions and inquire leads to students to think critically as they are using their academic knowledge in a real world application. Number 3, student-centered. And the PBL says the role of the teachers shift from content delivered to the facilitator or the teacher project manager. The students work more independently throughout the PBL process, with the teacher providing support only when needed. and students are encouraged to take or make their own decisions about how best to do their work and demonstrate their understanding. And the PBL process fosters a student independent ownership of his or her work and the development of skills, okay? And you can use some benefits and disadvantages. So let me start with the disadvantages of the project-based learning. So the first one is about the subjectivity and assessment. When creating a project-based learning product, many critics will say you are closing the door on objectives. And this is because it's opposed to using standardized forms of measurement, and you rely on the subjectively assessing or a range of a product. Okay. Number two, hyper focus on product or project creation. It's possibly for the day-to-day focus of project-based learning to transition from developing and applying essential skills to merely working on a product. When this happens, it can dictate the students won't reap benefits such as improved problem solving and knowledge retention. And the last one is about the questionable application in subjects like math. So the skill based for elementary learners or dedicating time to the project-based learning may not be the best use of time. So if you want to put this in practice, you can consider this. Will the students better understand multiplication by applying it in a project-based learning context, or by running through trails and word problems? So if you can pay attention to this disadvantage, maybe you can better at the moment to apply it in a classroom, okay? So now the benefits of a project-based learning. The first one is increased engagement. So the project-based learning empowers the students to play an active role in learning as the complex tasks take on demand novel approach and are relevant to real-world context. So this creates a classroom environment in which the students overwhelmingly report feeling engaging according to the different goals that they propose in the classroom. Better knowledge retention. So comparing the traditional instruction and extensive research indicates that the students who complete project-based learning exercise and assessment often have or show superior knowledge retention in a range of subjects from subjects like math or the second language learning. Okay. Number three, improve critical thinking abilities. So this process of completely and delivering a project generate product inherently builds problem and solving abilities according to the research from recent in 2010. And this is the students must heavily exercise those abilities, applying them in different contexts. For this reason, the research indicate that the students in project-based learning environment can better use problem solving skill out of school than those in traditional learning settings. And the last one is more opportunities to explore in ED Tech. Project-based learning by nature enables students to use ED Tech and explore internet sources and technological tools. So ED Tech, on the other hand, can lend itself to creating and delivering artifacts. Okay. So can I mention the last part of this information that is about the unstructured versus structured projects? So that the students learn more about from working on unstructured or ill-structured projects than they do in highly structured ones. Unstructured projects are sometimes referred to as open-ended, and because they have no predictable or prescribed solution. And this way, open-ended projects require students to consider assumptions and constraints as well as to frame the consider or the problem they are trying to solve. And structured projects those require students to do their own structuring of the problem in hand. process that has been shown to enhance students' ability to transfer learning to or solving concepts. So you have to use all this information to try to apply in the classroom in the case that you are a teacher, right? So you can use this information to develop your activities inside your classroom. Okay, so remember that you can find important aspects inside the reading. Number one, about the definition, how those PBL different from chose to in a project, and different references. Okay. This is the last video that. Okay. So it's going to be hard, but hard does not mean impossible. Okay, this is the last presentation of our class today. Okay, students, it's important to know that you have to develop all the activities in the platform and complete the form. If you have any question or any doubt, you can write in the consultation form. Okay, es importante que completen sus actividades porque ya estamos a escasas 3 clases de terminar el curso. Y bueno, es importante hacer las actividades para que no quedemos con esos puntitos de restantes. No, que vamos a esperar hasta la última clase para empezar a entregar tareas. Así que vamos a tratar de completar esas actividades y enviarlas, ¿ok? Recuerden las pruebas también. Cualquier consulta, cualquier duda que surja en el desarrollo de las mismas, pueden escribirlo a través del foro de consultas. O si surge algún problema con la plataforma, pues escribirlo al soporte técnico que lo pueden encontrar dentro de la misma. Okay. So with this information, I consider that is all for today. Have a nice weekend and see you in the next class. Okay. Nos vemos la próxima clase. Muchas gracias.
Sí, así es, profe. Sin más que agregar, entonces, nada más que recordarle a los chicos, como bien la profesora mencionó hace un momento, subir las tareas que tengan hasta el momento y por favor no esperar hasta el último momento para hacer las tareas y entregarlas, porque sabemos que normalmente pasa así. Entonces, cuando pasa, tenemos muchas solicitudes para entonces poder resolverlas. Algún inconveniente con la plataforma, ya como la profesora mencionó, escribir al soporte técnico de igual manera, pueden hacerlo llegar mediante los chats. La información que se presenta en los chats, también nosotros la revisamos y hacemos las correcciones pertinentes. Bien, sin más que agregar, profe, saludos. Nos vemos.